Hey bakers, welcome back to my channel. I'm Angela from Cake Angel, and today I'm going to share another one of my favorite festive bakes with you. Today we're going to make a vanilla Swiss roll, which is also an alternative version of a festive Yule Log, which normally has chocolate buttercream, but this one is just a nice lighter version for those of you that don't want chocolatey desserts over the holidays. To start with, we're going to add 3 eggs and 75 grams of sugar to our stand mixer. Now you want to make sure that these whisk together for about 10 minutes, and at that point the mixture is going to look pale and light and fluffy, and it's just going to give that nice lightness to the Swiss roll that we would have. This is a very light and airy cake. It's not like a regular cake at all, and it is so good. There are so many different things that you can do with it as well. I'm going to be using vanilla bean paste in mine just to add a little bit of extra flavor, but you could literally flavor the sponge in any flavor that you like at all. So let's carry on with this whipping. As you can see, it is starting to lighten already. You want to make sure you use that whisk attachment for your stand mixer as well, or if you've got a hand mixer, use that, but it is going to need to whisk for 10 minutes. Once it gets to this color, you know it's ready, and you can see here how it's running off the whisk as well. It's leaving a nice trail in it, which means that it is the perfect consistency. Now to that we're adding 75 grams of plain flour, and I'm also adding a teaspoon of my vanilla bean paste. And as I previously mentioned, you could flavor this with a different flavor if you like. Next, we're going to use our spatula and fold it in. Now this takes a while because you want to make sure you're not knocking down the air that you've already incorporated into that sponge mix. So take your time. I like to go around the bowl. As you can see, I'm turning my bowl as well just to make it a little bit easier on my shoulder, and keep pulling it from the outside into the middle, making sure you're combining all that flour, which invariably will fall to the very bottom of your bowl. What you want to do is make sure it is fully incorporated, because you don't want to add it to your cake pan and then realize that you've got a lot of flour left in the bottom. So be patient with it. It does take a while. This is ready though. So now I'm going to add it to my lined baking tray. Now this is a 13 by 9 inch Swiss roll tin, or just a regular cookie tin. There are various different names for them. I will pop the link for the ones that I use in the description as well, and I'll do that for all of the tools that I'm using in this, so that if you don't have them, you can just pick them up off of Amazon, and they're nice and easy for you to get. Then you're going to spread it out with a spatula. Now again, when you do this, make sure you're not pressing down too hard, because you don't want to knock out any of that nice light fluffiness that we've already incorporated into the sponge mix. Make sure you do get into those corners. And something else I should have mentioned as well, you want to make sure that you've greased that baking tray before you put your parchment on it. That's going to make it easier to remove it once this is baked. And we are ready to bake it now, so just give it a couple of wraps on the counter. Then it's going to bake for about 8 to 10 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit until it's slightly golden, like you can see here. Our next stage now, before this cools down, we immediately want to turn it out onto parchment paper. Now this is the trick with Swiss rolls. You want to make sure you get this turned out before it cools down, because they have a tendency to crack if you leave them cool down. So as you can see, I've just pulled out some parchment paper. I've dusted it completely with my sugar, and then I'm going to carefully try and flip it over without it falling out of the pan too quickly. It is a bit of a juggle to do that, and use a spatula or another tool if you need to help take that tray off, because of course that tray is still hot at this stage, as is the cake as well. Then you want to very carefully take your parchment off, and as you can see here, it doesn't want to come off that easily, so you may want to do it in stages. Take your time with it. The key here is that you do not want to break that sponge at all. It's got a lovely nice airiness to it. You can see all the air bubbles in it. It is perfect, lovely and thin as well. And there we go, the parchment has come off nicely, so that's great. The next thing we're going to do is go straight to adding our filling to it. Now again, you might think, well, why would you do that when it's warm? Again, the reason is that we don't want this Swiss roll to crack. So I'm just going to use some of my strawberry sauce. That's just basically a thin strawberry jam that I make every year. I'm going to spread that on with my brush. And the nice thing with this is going to soak into the sponge as well. I will share a recipe for my strawberry jam at a future date, so watch out for that on my channel. And using the brush is really great because it's making sure again that you're not putting too much pressure on that sponge as you're adding to the filling. Now, of course, you could put lots of different fillings in this. Sometimes Swiss rolls will have buttercream or whipped cream in them. You could do cream and jam as well. You could do buttercream. If you want to check out my chocolate Yule Log, which is the chocolate version of this, then check out the link that I'm sharing above and you can see how I fill that one as well. Now, my nice trick with Swiss rolls and Yule Logs is that when it comes to the time to actually roll it, you want to use the parchment paper to do that rather than doing it by hand. So you can see here that I'm picking up that parchment and I'm letting it roll with the parchment by itself. I'm just tapping it down at the end to make sure that the crease is at the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is go back and roll the whole thing back up in the parchment paper. This is going to seal everything in really nicely, and then we're going to let it sit and cool until it is completely cool. Now, whilst it's doing that, I've got a little bonus tutorial for you here. To make this more of a festive Swiss roll, we're actually going to make some fondant holly and berries to go on top of it. Now, I'm using homemade marshmallow fondant for this, and you can check out the link above for that. It is a really great fondant. If you've never tried it, definitely have a go. It is so cheap to make and tastes so much nicer than the store-bought ones as well. But of course, if you don't want to make it, you could just buy regular fondant, and you don't need a lot of it for this. This is literally just to make a couple of little decorations to sit on top of our Swiss roll. So there we go, I've got my holly cut, and then I'm just rolling up the rest of that fondant to stop it drying out. Next, I'm going to use my Dresden tool to score some lines in it, just to give it a little bit more of a realistic look. Now, anytime I make something that's floral or leaves, I want it to look botanically correct. So I'm just scoring it and then picking it up and pinching it a little bit in my fingers just to give it a little bit of movement, and I think it helps to add a little bit of whimsy to your decorations as well. So I'm scoring a central line and also lines coming off of the side of that as well, as you can see here. So you'll notice that I have an odd number of them, and that's just because I wanted to mix it up a little bit. I don't necessarily want each of the Swiss rolls to look the same. You're probably wondering what I'm going to do with it as well, because we have such a long Swiss roll. So before we get to that, let's finish off and make our berries. And this is the same marshmallow fondant that I've just colored with red. And then I'm rolling them into balls in my hand, and you'll see that I do that in the palm of my hand. That's the easiest way to make circles out of fondant, just rolling it up in the palm and letting all those lines disappear as you roll it around in itself. So let's have a quick look at them. Let's put a few of them together and see what they look like with the berries. I think that looks really cute. Now it's time for us to unwrap our Swiss roll. Now, you could leave it as a large one, but I actually wanted to make mini ones this time. And the simple way to do that is to take your ends and cut those off. I like to give those to the kids because they're usually waiting for it whenever I make Swiss rolls. And then the other three I'm just going to cut up and add to my board. And then we're going to put a couple of finishing touches on them. You can see that nice swirl in it as well. We've got that really distinctive look that you always see on a Swiss roll. And to finish it off and make it more festive, we're going to add a little bit of snow, which is powdered sugar. So you just want to use a little sieve and then lightly dust it over the top, and I think it looks perfect. Then you want to go ahead and add your fondant decorations. Now, you could use a little bit of icing to secure them here if you wanted to. We actually ate these straight away, so I knew that there was no point actually going to the trouble of adding icing. But if you were putting them on a dessert table, you would probably want to do that to make sure nothing falls off when you're transferring them, as you can see there with that berry escaped. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching this Swiss roll and also my bonus tutorial of how to make holly and berries. Make sure you pop a comment below and let me know what you think, if you're going to have a go at trying my technique for rolling the Swiss roll as well. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Happy holidays!